Arrival at Sunspire Academy floated quietly in orbit above a pale blue gas giant, surrounded by rings of crystal and debris that shimmered in the artificial light of the twin suns. It was a masterpiece of alien architecture, a sprawling campus of silver towers, sky bridges, and anti-gravity walkways, all held together by invisible force fields and quantum energy. Here, the brightest minds from across the galaxy came to learn the secrets of science, warfare, diplomacy, and power. It was a place of pride for the Galactic Union, and only the top students from the most advanced civilizations earned a place inside its walls. No one from Earth had ever been accepted until today. In one of the Academy's glass corridors, students from various species stood near the landing bay, buzzing with excitement and curiosity. Some floated. Others hissed or clicked as they communicated in dozens of alien languages. All of them were watching the main hangar, where a ship had just docked. Its design was old and plain, nothing like the sleek cruisers from noble houses or the living ships grown by the Plantkin. It looked like a cargo hauler, patched together, with steel plates and thick welding lines, and covered in carbon burns. There were no escort drones, no banners, no flags. Just one vessel, gray and silent, now opening its hatch. "I thought Earth was a death world," whispered a tall, crystalline student to her neighbor, a round, floating creature with glowing eyes. "It is," the floating student replied, keeping its voice low. "That's why they're calling him the Deathworlder. That's just a myth. No one actually survives there. Apparently he did. And now he's here." As the ramp lowered, the crowd leaned in. A figure stepped out slowly. He wore dark clothes with no visible armor, just a black jacket and tough boots. He wasn't tall or bulky like some of the warrior species. His face was unreadable calm, focused, and strangely quiet. He had no translator device in his ear. No visible implants. Just a small metal cube hanging on a string around his neck. His dark eyes moved over the crowd, taking in the faces, the structure, the guards, the exits. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply walked forward as if he belonged. The crowd's whispers grew louder, but the human didn't react. Some students stepped aside as he passed. Others held their ground, waiting for him to flinch or look away. He didn't. A small reptilian student made a rude hissing sound and clicked his claws together in challenge, a traditional insult among several warrior races. The human turned his head slowly, stared at him for 2 seconds, and then kept walking. The reptilian blinked twice, took a step back, and said nothing more. Watching from the upper level, one of the instructors, a tall insectoid being named Vrexel, tilted his head in mild surprise. He had trained war veterans and psychic empaths. He knew how to read body language, tension, fear, aggression. This human moved like a soldier who had already seen too much and feared too little. That was not how first-year students were supposed to act. Vrexel made a mental note to review Earth's file again, just in case the old reports had missed something. As the human reached the main hallway, a staff member greeted him in Galactic Common. "Welcome to Sunspire Academy. Please state your name for official registration." The human paused. "Callan," he said. "Last name? Just Callan." The staff member hesitated, then nodded and entered the data. "Your orientation begins in 10 minutes. Your schedule has already been uploaded to your room assistant. You will be placed in Group 7 for the next cycle. That group includes advanced survival training, simulated combat, and strategic theory. Any questions?" Callan shook his head. "You may proceed," the staff member said, gesturing down the hall. As Callan walked deeper into the academy, his footsteps echoed lightly on the polished floor. The architecture changed subtly with each section, glass and light in the science halls, stone and shadow in the combat wings, soft sound and scent in the diplomatic chambers. It was as if the building shifted to match the needs of the students within it. But nothing seemed to surprise Callan. He walked like someone who had already seen the worst the universe could offer. In his assigned dormitory wing, His door slid open with a soft hiss. The room was simple: bed, table, wall screen, storage unit, and a small cleaning station. Other rooms nearby were filled with the sounds of laughter, argument, or music. But Callan's room remained quiet. He stepped inside, closed the door, and sat on the bed. Then he reached under his jacket and pulled out the metal cube. It was smooth, about the size of a fist, with no visible markings. He placed it on the table. For a moment, it just sat there. Then, as the lights dimmed automatically for the evening cycle, the cube gave off a faint hum and began to glow with a pale blue light. Callan stared at it for a long time, saying nothing. Outside, in the Academy's surveillance room, one of the security officers zoomed in on the footage. "That human," he muttered. "Something's not right about him." First encounter. The morning at Sunspire Academy began as usual, with the echo of the campus bell rippling through the gravity-suspended towers and the slow shift of glass walkways moving students from one sector to another as the Academy's artificial daylight bathed everything in a clean golden hue. The halls buzzed with energy as students of different species prepared for the day's first session, which happened to be one of the most anticipated ones on the schedule, a mental endurance trial known simply as the Fear Chamber, designed to push new recruits to their psychological limits. This wasn't just a test, it was a rite of passage for all first-year cadets, and today was Group 7's turn. Instructor Luvas stood near the entrance of the chamber, his expression unreadable behind his semi-transparent visor, and his towering frame cast a long shadow across the floor as he spoke, his voice low but powerful, echoing slightly through the steel and stone of the chamber walls. He explained the rules clearly and with no concern for comfort. This simulation would access each student's deepest fears. It would not physically harm them, but the mental strain was real too. Real for some. Those who failed were often reassigned to lower-tier academies or quietly removed from active training programs altogether. The only way to pass was to endure until the system registered emotional control and stability. As the students filed into the observation room, most still whispered about the new arrival. Some glanced at the human with curiosity, others with suspicion. Callan stood near the back, his hands behind his back, his eyes calmly scanning the room without speaking to anyone. He looked less like a student and more like a man waiting for orders. The first few students entered the Fear Chamber one by one. Their simulations played on large screens for the instructors to monitor and for the rest of the group to observe. A feathered avian screamed as he was trapped in an illusion of endless skyfall. Spiraling downward with no wings, a reptilian girl fought off hallucinated fire consuming her home planet, and a psychic creature curled into a ball as an invisible force crushed its mind. All of them exited, shaken, gasping, trembling with sweat on their skin or feathers or fur. Some needed help to walk back to their seats. Then it was Callan's turn. There was a pause in the room, a shift in mood as he stepped forward. He didn't show any hesitation, no nervous glances, no deep breaths. He walked into the chamber like it was just another room, like none of this mattered to him. The doors slid closed, and the screen flickered to life, displaying the feed from inside. At first, nothing happened. The room around Callan remained neutral, featureless, dimly lit. Then the chamber's AI activated and scanned his brain, waves deeper than it had ever scanned before, searching for phobias or emotional triggers. It pulsed again and again, but still the room remained empty. The instructors exchanged uncertain glances. The AI should have detected something by now. Even the most trained minds reacted to simulated trauma, yet Callan stood there alone, completely unaffected. Then the scene inside changed abruptly. The chamber shifted into a simulated war zone. A burning forest thick with smoke, distant screams, and the sounds of alien beasts tearing through trees. A child cried from somewhere nearby. Explosions lit up the sky red and orange, but Callan didn't move. He didn't panic. He didn't drop to the floor or cover his ears like the others. Had he simply turned toward the sound of the crying and walked calmly through the smoke, stepping over fire. Avoiding falling branches, ducking under a shattered drone wing, he found the source, a small synthetic child avatar trapped beneath a collapsed shelter, crying and begging for help. He knelt down, examined the wreckage, calculated the pressure points, and lifted the beam just enough to pull the child free. The simulation threw more chaos at him. Enemy shadows leaping from the trees, the ground splitting, the child glitching into a horrifying image. But Callan didn't even blink. He pulled the child close, rolled behind a log, and in one precise motion, pulled something from his jacket. It looked like nothing more than a steel rod, but in a flash it extended into a curved blade glowing blue with heat. He struck cleanly, disabling the attackers with mechanical precision before the system could even register full hostility inside the observation room. Everyone was silent, even the instructors. One of them checked the data feed again, confused by what they were seeing. The AI had increased the fear level to maximum, and yet the human's vitals remained almost boringly steady, pulse at 62. Breathing, even brain activity, barely elevated. No spikes, no panic, just calm, controlled movement, as if he had done all of this before. After several more minutes, the chamber lights dimmed, and the AI finally gave up. The simulation ended with a single word flashing on screen: stable. The door opened, and Callan stepped out without a word, his face as calm as when he went in, his clothes slightly rumpled from movement, but his expression unchanged. He walked past the stunned crowd and took his seat again, folding his arms as if nothing had happened. The other students stared, some with awe, some with fear, others with something more dangerous, growing curiosity. Instructor Lovas finally broke the silence by marking something on his datapad before looking directly at Callan and speaking in a slow, measured tone. The student, he said, is not to be underestimated. In a room full of warriors, empaths, telepaths, and genetically engineered elites, the most human-looking being had just walked through their worst nightmare without flinching, and suddenly the nickname Deathworlder didn't seem like a joke anymore. The first challenge show of strength the next day brought a shift in the atmosphere across Sunspire Academy as news of Callan's flawless performance in the fear chamber spread like wildfire through every training hall and common room. The students who had laughed at the idea of a human joining their ranks were no longer laughing, and the ones who had ignored him before now whispered his name when he passed, as if saying it too loudly might bring his gaze in their direction. Even the instructors had begun to reevaluate the Earth file, which had previously been marked as low threat, low tech, and low priority. The label had changed now, a new word added quietly by the Academy's internal system. Under review, instructors from the combat division decided to escalate the next test, moving Group 7 into the training arena for a live physical assessment designed to measure not just strength but control and decision-making. The arena was located deep beneath the Academy, shielded with layers of reinforced alloy and surrounded by magnetic fields. It was originally created for testing advanced weapon systems, but now served as the perfect ground for testing future warriors. The students lined up on the observation deck, looking down at the circular battleground far below, where simulated terrain could shift into deserts, ruined swamps, or zero-gravity fields, depending on the scenario. Instructor Vrexel stood at the center of the group, explaining the rules. The challenge was simple. Each student would be matched against a random opponent one-on-one, and the winner would be the first to disarm, disable, or pin the other using nothing but their physical skills. No weapons, no psychic boosts, no implants allowed. This was meant to test raw combat instincts in the purest form. The first few matches were intense. A feathered avian clashed with a feline predator, both moving at blinding speed, claws flashing and wings flaring. Another match featured a thick-skinned brute with 6 arms against a serpentine water dweller who used fluid motion and misdirection to gain the upper hand. The fights were messy but impressive, and the crowd roared each time someone was thrown to the ground. When Callan's name appeared on the screen, the room went silent again. His opponent was a massive insectoid called Joruk, from a high-gravity world where physical power was everything. Joruk was twice Callan's size covered in armored plating and known for lifting transport vehicles during training drills. He stepped into the arena with confidence, slamming his fists together and letting out a deep, chittering war cry that echoed through the chamber. Callan entered without expression, his jacket gown replaced by a simple academy training uniform. His movements were quiet and measured as he approached the center and faced Jorak head-on. The signal to begin sounded with a low chime, and Jorak charged forward with a speed that surprised even the spectators, swinging both arms in a crushing arc. Meant to end the match in seconds, but Callan wasn't there anymore. He had already moved, stepping sideways, not jumping, not dodging wildly, just a simple shift of weight that let Jorak's momentum carry him past, and in the same motion, Callan placed a hand on the larger creature's back and pushed, guiding his opponent face first into the wall of the arena. The crowd gasped, and Jorak spun with fury, launching a flurry of blows that cracked the ground where Callan had just stood. Still, Callan did not strike back. He didn't need to. He watched, he waited, and he moved, always just one breath ahead, never wasting energy, never overcommitting. And then in one perfect moment, as Jorak lunged again, Callan ducked low, swept the legs, and rolled him over. Using the giant's own size as leverage, within seconds he had Jorak pinned, an arm locked around his neck and the other pressing at a joint just enough to cause pain without injury. The signal rang. Again, match over. Jorak tapped the ground 3 times in surrender. Callan stood slowly and stepped back as Jorak rose, confused, humiliated, but not angry. Instead, the insectoid bowed slightly, acknowledging the skill of someone he had completely underestimated. The students watching did not cheer. This time they only watched, some with narrowed eyes, others with thoughtful silence, because what they had just seen was not luck or brute force. It was calculation. It was discipline. It was something they weren't used to seeing in humans. And now, the idea of Earth being a backward, primitive planet seemed harder to believe. Back in the upper command room, Instructor Vrexel reviewed the footage frame by frame, noting every movement, every shift and stance, every breath Callan took during the fight. And what he saw disturbed him, because it wasn't just impressive, it was too precise, too practiced, the kind of training that did not exist in any Earth military files available to the Union. Later that evening, Callan walked alone down the hallways, his expression unreadable as always, his metal cube resting quietly against his chest, the glow from it now soft and steady, and in the shadows behind him a pair of mechanical eyes watched from the wall, silently recording every step and transmitting the data to an unknown destination somewhere far beyond the Academy. And in that moment, as he passed by the statue of the Academy's founder, a voice spoke in a low whisper, barely audible even to the recording drone. He said, "They think this is just a school, but they have no idea what's coming next. Secrets of the Cube, the Knights at Sunspire Academy were never truly dark, because the stars beyond the transparent ceiling glowed with unnatural brilliance, and the twin moons of the gas giant cast a cold silver light through the high halls. But tonight felt different. Something in the air felt heavier, as if the Academy itself was holding its breath. And beneath the calm surface of the sleeping campus, one room remained dimly lit, occupied by the one student who had become the center of every rumor, every whisper, and every silent watch list. Callan sat cross-legged on the floor of his dorm, his back straight, his eyes focused not on a screen or a datapad, but on the small metal cube placed gently in front of him on the table. The cube had no switches, no ports, no markings, and to the Academy's scanners it was just an inert block of alloy. Yet here in the quiet, it pulsed once again, faint and blue, like the slow heartbeat of something. Not fully awake, Callan reached out, not with fear or caution, but with something closer to habit, his fingers brushing the cold surface, and as he made contact, the pulse grew steadier, responding to his presence, as if it recognized him, or perhaps as if it belonged to him. Far beneath the Academy, buried inside a restricted data vault, 2 technicians reviewed, flagged anomalies from the previous week. One of them paused as the cube's sensor data appeared on the screen, showing electromagnetic fluctuations and gravitational distortions inconsistent with any known device used by students or Even instructors, they forwarded the file to their superior, but received a priority delay stamp, meaning it had been intercepted and rerouted to higher clearance. Someone was already watching back in the dorm. Callan's eyes narrowed slightly as the cube lifted off the table and began to rotate, slowly in midair, lines of light emerging from its sides like veins, glowing blue, white, and red symbols flickered across its surface. Not Galactic common, not Earth English, something older and deeper, and yet Callan seemed to understand without needing to read. He closed his eyes and listened, not with ears, but with memory, the hum of the cube matching the rhythm of a voice he had not heard in years, a voice that had warned him, trained him, prepared him long before he ever arrived at Sunspire. Outside the door, someone paused, breathing softly, trying not to make a sound. It was Yalara, a feathered avian student with sharp eyes and sharper instincts who had been watching Callan since the first trial. She wasn't afraid of him, but she didn't trust him either, and her curiosity had now overpowered her caution. She pressed a small sensor disc against the wall, hoping to capture audio, but the moment it touched the surface, the cube inside responded instantly. The light pulsed red. The room temperature dropped slightly, and Callan opened his eyes without turning his head. He stood slowly, and the cube lowered back onto the table, as if obeying a silent command. Then, without a word, he walked to the door and opened it. Yalara nearly fell forward, but caught herself, her wings flaring slightly to regain balance. She tried to speak, but her voice caught when she looked into his eyes, not angry, not surprised, just calm and steady, as if he had known she was there the entire time. Stepped aside wordlessly, and she entered hesitantly, her eyes drifting to the cube, now dull again, silent and unmoving. "What is that?" she asked, her voice low, unsure. Callan looked at her for a moment, as if weighing whether to answer, then finally spoke something. "I was never meant to bring here. Is it a weapon?" she asked. "No," he said, "but it can become one if it needs to be." She moved closer, the air around the cube feeling thicker, harder to breathe, like the weight of pressure at the bottom of a deep ocean. She reached out but stopped as the cube flickered again, blue this time, and the table under it vibrated slightly. "Where did it come from?" she asked more softly. "Now Earth," he said. "But not your Earth." She frowned, confused. "It came from what Earth used to be before they erased the records, before they shut it all down, before they tried to bury what we were." He continued slowly, the words heavy, as if pulled from a place he didn't want to visit. "Oh, it's old technology." She guessed it. "It's older than technology," Callan said. "It's memory wrapped in code, instinct carved into metal. It doesn't just store data, it responds to emotion. It learns from thought. It's a key and a question, and maybe a warning." She looked at him as silence fell between them again, and the only sound was the soft hum of the cube returning to stillness. "Why did they let you in here?" she asked finally. "If they're afraid of what you might be." "They didn't let me in," he replied. "I wasn't invited. I forced my way in. They just haven't realized it yet." Outside in the Academy control room, the surveillance feed from Callan's room went dark, static flickering across the monitors before the entire screen went black. The technicians scrambled to restore the feed, but the system reported no malfunction and flagged the file with a silent alert code: Violet, unauthorized technology influence in secured network. Someone far above Sunspire, aboard a Union command ship, received the alert and tapped a gloved finger against the console, staring at the blinking signal with unreadable eyes. They opened a secure channel and sent a single message: activate observation protocol. The Deathworlder is not alone. Shadows within the Academy. The Academy halls were colder than usual that morning, though no one had changed the temperature settings, and no alert had been triggered by the climate control. Students moved through the corridors more quietly, some walking in groups, others casting uneasy glances at the security drones floating above them. Whispers of restricted files and blocked surveillance footage had begun spreading like invisible smoke across the Academy, yet no one spoke directly about what they feared, because no one was sure who might be listening in. The Central Command Tower instructor Vrexel reviewed the latest training reports with a grim expression. Several matches from the combat arena had been flagged for re-evaluation due to unexplained anomalies. Strange fluctuations in power field responses, sensor lag near specific students, and missing audio segments. From the observation decks, one name kept surfacing in every file: Callan, the human, the Deathworlder, and though Vrexel had not yet voiced his suspicion, he knew that coincidence had long since left the conversation elsewhere in the academy. Callan walked through the engineering wing with slow, purposeful steps, observing the students as they worked on advanced drone schematics, neural link, machines, and gravitational stabilizers. He said nothing, offered no help, and asked no questions, but watched with the kind of intensity that made others nervous, not because he was hostile, but because it felt like he already understood what they were building, as if he had seen all of it before, in another time or another life, behind the walls deeper within. The academy, a quiet meeting, was taking place among faculty members who did not wear uniforms or nameplates. They were not instructors, not scientists, not diplomats, but something else, entirely sent by the Galactic Union under hidden orders to observe, detect, report, and if necessary remove any threat to the balance of Sunspire Academy. And now they had begun to argue quietly in low voices about how to handle the anomaly that had walked in from a planet they had dismissed as irrelevant. He shouldn't be here, one of them said. His records are incomplete, his application was unauthorized, and no one from Earth passed the preliminary screening. And yet, said another with mechanical precision, he completed every simulation without failure, broke combat records, bypassed biometric security measures, and disrupted surveillance without using visible tools or code. No student has ever done that, not in the last 5 cycles. We should act now before it spreads, said the third. This place holds more than just knowledge, it holds containment if he discovers what is buried beneath. No. The first replied too quickly. We watch, we learn. If he is what we suspect, then removing him would only trigger something far worse, and besides, we're not the only ones watching. At that moment, Callan stepped into a training lift and rode alone to the older levels of the academy, places where the walls bore scars from old wars and the energy fields flickered just slightly at the edges of perception. There was no class scheduled there, no reason to be there at all, and yet he moved with the certainty of someone following a map written in memory, not paper. He passed a sealed door, ignored by most students, marked restricted maintenance zone, and without slowing, placed his hand on the panel which should have denied access, but instead opened with a soft hiss, as if welcoming him in the hallway. Beyond was dark, the lights activating only as he moved forward, revealing broken statues, old banners, and walls covered with faded inscriptions, not in any known galactic language, but something older, more primal, a script that matched the symbols on his cube. He stopped before a door that looked like it had not been opened in decades, the metal thick and lined with runes that hummed softly. As he approached, he placed the cube against a small indentation in the door, and the hum deepened, pulsing once, twice, and then the door began to open, not with machinery, but with something more alive, as if the metal responded like muscle stretching and bending to allow him passage inside the room. The air was heavy, filled with a silence that pressed against his chest like deep ocean pressure, and in the center stood a platform holding a sphere of dark glass, spinning slowly, suspended in midair. Callan approached, and the cube in his hand glowed brighter, the same ancient symbols lighting up along his arms and neck, faint and flickering like fireflies caught in a storm. Behind him, a silent figure watched from the shadows, a presence cloaked in adaptive fabric, nearly invisible, but not unseen by Callan, who spoke without turning around. You're not the first to follow me, and you won't be the last. The figure did not respond, instead sending a data packet through a hidden channel reporting coordinates, energy readings, and an urgent directive to escalate, contain mental inquamas. Stepped forward again and touched the glass sphere, and in that instant memory flooded his mind, not his own, but ancient, thousands of years old visions of Earth, not broken, not forgotten, but burning with light and machines and power unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Humans not weak, not primitive, but creators of things the stars had feared and tried to erase. And in that memory, he saw the face of someone who looked like him, holding the same cube, speaking a message that echoed in the present. They will forget you, they will bury you, but you must return. Cullen pulled his hand away, and the light dyed the sphere. Returned to stillness, and the symbols along his skin vanished. He turned toward the silent observer, and for the first time, his voice held something colder than calm. Tell them their academy sits on stolen ruins, and the past is waking up. Then he walked past the watcher who, for all their training in tech, did not move or speak, because for the first time in years, they felt something they were not programmed to feel: fear. The council reacts far above Sunspire Academy, in the orbit of the gas giant. Hidden behind layers of stealth fields and artificial moons, the central command station of the Galactic Council hovered in complete silence from the outside. It appeared lifeless, cold, and dark, but within its walls sat minds that had shaped empires, rewritten laws, and erased entire civilizations from history without ever leaving their chairs. The council was not a place of open debate or public record. It was a fortress of memory, a place where secrets were buried beneath other secrets, and where the truth was always a matter of strategy, not honesty. Inside a vast chamber surrounded by floating rings of data and glowing streams of information, the council gathered 12 figures seated in a perfect circle, each representing a core species of the Union, and each wearing a different expression of concern, calculation, or concealed fear. The topic at hand was not war, diplomacy, or trade. It was one single student, one anomaly, one word that had triggered emergency protocols across half the security systems in their inner sectors. Deathworlder, the watched a recording taken from deep within the academy, footage of the boy called Callan, standing before the ancient sphere, touching it as forgotten symbols glowed across his skin, and as the door to a long-sealed ruin opened as if it had been waiting only for him, the silence in the room stretched, until one counselor finally spoke, an elder of the crystalline kind, her voice as sharp as glass and just as cold. This was supposed to be impossible, she said. Earth was contained, its history erased, its bloodlines diluted. Nothing of the old world should remain, and yet he stands within our most secure academy, holding a device that answers to him, and him alone, replied another counselor. A being of smoke and shifting light, whose people had once fought against the humans during the silent expansion before being forced into surrender after losing entire stars. We should act now, said a third, the one known only as the speaker, his form hidden beneath golden armor that had not been removed in centuries. We've waited too long already. Every second he remains increases the risk of exposure and awakening. And who will stop him? Asked the crystalline elder. Who among us will go down there and remove him from an academy full of witnesses and recordings, and other students who now see him as more than human? Shall we start another cleansing? Shall we repeat the mistake that made Earth a death world in the first place? The chamber fell quiet again, as that word hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. Deathworld. It was a term the council itself had created centuries ago to describe places too dangerous, too wild, too full of unpredictability. Earth had not simply survived under that title, it had earned it by turning back invasions, breaking containment, and producing individuals that defied every known law of biology and reason. The speaker finally broke the silence with a gesture, and a new file appeared in the air before them, a classified log, sealed since the fall of the first expansion. The file showed images of Earth before the blackout cities, made of light machines that moved faster than thought, energy drawn from the bones of planets, and children learning faster than advanced AI. It showed war, and it showed victory, and it showed a warning written in the ancient tongue. The one Callan now seemed to understand, the last human archive. Read, the speaker, in a voice low and heavy, stated. This technology must never fall into Union hands. It was not built for peace, it was built to survive extinction. A vote was called in silence, each counselor raising one hand slowly. 5 voted for observation, 5 voted for extraction. 2 remained still, unreadable, until the speaker raised his hand last and broke the tithe. Council shall observe for now, but activate Protocol 13 if the human moves beyond the academy, if he attempts to contact others of his kind or seeks access to the core vaults, he must be stopped back at Sunspire Academy. A new figure arrived by shuttle, dressed not in the robes of an instructor nor the armor of security, but in plain, dark gray. A visitor with no name entered the registration hall, and the systems did not ask for clearance because he carried something older than codes. He carried authority. Born of fear and hidden law, he was a shadow agent, one of the few sent when threats could not be explained or erased through normal means. He did not speak as he moved through the academy. His presence unnoticed by most students, yet felt like a chill in the air. Where he walked, he had come not to observe, but to confirm, and if necessary to act. Without hesitation, without permission, and without record, Kalen, meanwhile, stood in the combat chamber, once again. This time alone, the arena set to training mode level 0, no opponent, no simulation, just silence. He stood at the center, eyes closed. The cube floating before him now, pulsing slowly with a deep golden light, one hand raised, one thought repeating in his mind. They buried the truth, he whispered, not in books or code, but in us, and now the cracks are showing. He opened his eyes and the cube responded, lines of energy forming around his feet, the floor humming as it began to reshape, not in simulation, but in reality. As if something beneath the arena had remembered its purpose and had begun to wake. And far above in the council chamber, a single alarm activated, silently flashing a color no one had seen in generations. Not red, not yellow, not even black. It was white, the color of rebirth, the color of return, the color of systems rebooting from a forgotten command. And every counselor stared in silence because they knew exactly what it meant. The legacy of Earth was no longer sleeping, legacy reborn. Ground beneath Sunspire Academy was no longer silent. The smooth stone of the training arena trembled gently at first, then, with greater rhythm, as if a giant heart had begun to beat deep within the bones of the structure. Students and instructors across the academy felt the change, though none of them could explain it. Lights flickered slightly, walls pulsed once, and then stabilized, and a strange hum passed through every device, every system, every machine. Like the academy itself had taken a breath for the first time in centuries. In the command tower, instructor Vrexel slammed his palm against the emergency lockout, only to find the system unresponsive. A red message scrolling across the screen in language he did not understand. Behind him, alarms pulsed silently, then turned white before vanishing altogether. Every attempt to isolate the signal failed as the entire grid rerouted to a single source. The arena beneath the academicalin stood in the center of that arena, calm and unmoving, as the cube floated above his open hand, glowing brighter. Now its surface opened like a flower, revealing layers of light and memory woven into ancient technology that no scanner could read. Glyphs spiraled out around his feet, along the floor, and into the walls, symbols that pulsed in gold and silver and blue, forming a pattern that the Academy systems recognized. Too late, as a language of command, a code of activation older than the Academy itself, the shadow agent entered the observation deck above, watching without emotion. His orders were simple: contain the subject, erase the source. But now he did not move. His eyes locked on the display as the floor beneath Callan slowly lowered, revealing a chamber no one had entered in over 500 years, not because it was sealed, but because it had been forgotten by design, hidden in plain sight, erased from every file and backup by the same council that had now begun to panic. Callan descended into the light below his steps, steady, his breath calm, and in his mind the voice of memory returned, not from the cube, not from outside, but from within. Words planted long ago by someone who had seen this moment coming long before it began. A voice that said, if they take your sky, make the stars remember. If they take your name, let the world whisper it in stone. If they take your truth, bury it in fire and wait for the kindling. The chamber he entered was vast, circular, lined with black stone veined in gold. Glowing with the energy of a long-dead sun, at its center stood a console shaped like a tree, its branches metallic and its core pulsing with faint energy. Callan approached and placed the cube at its center, and the moment metal touched metal, a surge of light burst through the chamber, rising into the academy above and beyond, into the sky like a beacon. Every student, every instructor, every drone stopped. In place as images flooded the air, holograms projected across the walls and ceilings of Sunspire, showing Earth as it once was, cities floating on oceans, machines moving with thought, children bending reality with nothing but focus and unity. Saw wars fought in silence, victories won with minds, not just weapons, and they saw the council standing above it all, afraid not of what Earth had done but of what it could do. The projections showed the purging of records, the collapse of Earth's satellites, the engineered chaos designed to reduce the planet to myth, and the final act, the scattering of Earth's legacy into relics hidden among stars. One of them now glowing in Callan's hand. Instructor Vrexel fell to one knee without knowing why, his mind overwhelmed by the truth, his training undone. In a moment of clarity and fear across the academy, others followed, some in awe, some in disbelief, and a few in growing anger, for they realized that the galaxy they had been taught to trust had lied about the foundation beneath them. Council in orbit watched helplessly, their controls shattered, their emergency protocols overridden by a system they thought long dead, and in that moment, one of the oldest counselors removed his mask, revealing a face marked by time and memory and pain, and he whispered a name not heard aloud in generations, Terra Prime. Back in the chamber, Callan looked up at the light, now rising like a sun inside the academy, reaching into the sky, broadcasting across satellites and distant moons, and to every hidden relay Earth had once planted before its fall. His voice, calm but clear, echoed through the signal and across the stars. Buried our name, you erased our path, you took our voice, but you could not take our roots. We are not your past, we are your reckoning. Cube dissolved into light, absorbed by the tree console, and with a low sound like a breath, releasing the chamber, went still, but above it, in the hearts and minds of thousands, something had changed forever. They no longer saw Earth as forgotten or broken. They saw it as hidden, guarded, waiting, and now awakened. Academy would never be the same. The Union would never speak of Deathworlders the same way again. And as Callan stepped out of the chamber, his eyes met the light of a new dawn, and he walked forward, not as a student, not as a survivor, but as a messenger of what once was and what would rise again, because the legacy of Earth was not in the soil or the machines or even the cube. It was in the blood and breath of those who remembered who they truly were. And now the galaxy would remember too.